I can fathom what attracted her to such a modest man. Being married to someone with limited means must be challenging, said a Harvard graduate classmate, looking down on me and scoffing at our reunion. Moreover, he pushed me and even went as far as to spill his drink on me. "Dad, what are you doing here?" However, right after that, my daughter arrived in a luxury car to pick me up, and the situation dramatically changed. My name is James. As a child, I miraculously survived a near-drowning incident during a trip to the river with my parents, thanks to the quick actions of those around us who saved me. I learned that it was a combination of people who rescued me, performed CPR, called for help in a moment's notice, and provided treatment and emotional support. Eventually, I aspired to become someone who could save others, just like those who had saved me. And so, my first step towards that dream was pursuing a career in medicine. From that day, I dedicated myself to my studies and eventually got into Harvard Medical School. However, there, I became the target of a classmate named Michael. "Just because you're a bit smart and everyone admires you, you think you're better than us," Michael taunted me with his friends. "Is that so? But I have no interest in engaging with you, Michael. Don't act so superior. Just you wait." I had no intention of clashing with Michael, nor did I see him as an adversary. Perhaps that irritated him even more, and Michael left with a threatening remark. From then on, Michael started to harass me. But no matter the harassment, I was so focused on my goal to become a doctor that I paid him no mind. However, one day, an incident made it impossible to continue as before. The company went bankrupt. "I'm truly sorry, James. My father's company had gone bankrupt." My father, apologizing and looking downcast, had visibly lost weight. I was so engrossed in my studies that I hadn't noticed how much pressure my father was under. Realizing this, I was stunned. "Please forgive me for not being able to support your education. How could you say that? Family is more important than anything else. Now it's my turn to support you and Mom." Startled by my father's words, I responded and placed my hand on the shoulder of my downtrodden father. Hearing my words, my father was moved to tears. My mother also cried next to him. At that moment, I made a certain decision. It's a shame to lose such an excellent student like you, but if it's for your family, it can't be helped. "I'm sorry, Professor Thompson. Thank you for everything up until now." After dropping out of Harvard, I went around expressing my gratitude to those who had supported me. I decided to give up on becoming a doctor and to start working in order to support my father and mother. The next day, I immediately started job hunting and was fortunately hired by a major company. And I worked hard for the sake of my father and mother. "James, thank you. I'll start looking for a job too." "Don't push yourself too hard. Take it at your own pace, Dad." Seeing me work hard, my father gradually began to regain his spirits. I occasionally thought back to when I had to drop out of the Harvard, but I had no regrets. As long as my parents were healthy and happy, I continued to work hard and eventually climbed up to the position of department manager. It was around that time that I met a certain woman. "James, you're always working hard. Please have some coffee." "Thank you, Christine." Christine, who had joined the company a few months ago, brought coffee to my desk. She was incredibly attentive and had a bright personality, making her popular within the company. At the same age of 30 as me, I found myself drawn to Christine. "Hey, if you're up for it, would you like to go out for a meal with me?" "Of course, I'd love to." One day, she happily accepted my invitation to dine out. From there, we hit it off, and as we went out to eat more frequently, I took the plunge and confessed my feelings to her. "Do you really think I'm good enough? Being in a relationship with you feels somewhat presumptuous." Christine modestly downplayed herself when in front of me, seeming a bit less confident. I shook my head. "You're being modest. I like you, including your modesty. I want to ask you again. Will you be in a relationship with me, with marriage in mind? Upon hearing this, Christine smiled shyly. From that day on, we officially became a couple. As we continued to date, met each other's parents, and eventually got married. After some time, we discovered Christine was pregnant. It's going to be a girl. We'll name her Elizabeth. Months later, Christine named our newborn daughter Elizabeth. Her big eyes were distinctive, and she was as cute as an angel, captivating us completely. I adored my daughter. I couldn't be more grateful to Christine for giving birth to Elizabeth. Elizabeth grew up healthy and happy, receiving love from both of us. Dad, you know so much. How come? Maybe because I studied a lot. I once dreamed of becoming a doctor, you know. Years later, when Elizabeth, now 5, casually asked, she was very curious. Why didn't you become a doctor if it was your dream? I had to give up on that dream, I guess. Now, we better hurry to daycare, or you'll be late. Okay. I quickly wrapped up the conversation and urged Elizabeth to get ready for daycare. I thought there was no need to explain all the details to her. Well then, have a good day. See you later. As Christine came to the entrance to see Elizabeth off to daycare, Elizabeth cheerfully waved back. Watching this scene, I couldn't help but smile fondly. Decades later, Elizabeth grew up to be a fine adult and moved out to live on her own. That's when I received a letter at home. An invitation to a reunion. It was from my Harvard classmates, inviting me to a reunion happening in a few months. Despite the harassment from Michael during my university days, I had friends with whom I was close. They must have remembered me, even though I dropped out midway, and sent me the invitation. While feeling nostalgic, I discussed it with Christine, and she said, "Go ahead, it'll be fine." With Christine's approval, I looked forward to meeting everyone after so long. Finally, the day of the reunion arrived. Elizabeth, who happened to be visiting home, drove me to the venue along with Christine for a meal. "Dad, I'll come back here to pick you up." "Are you sure? It's been a while since you've been home, and I don't want to use you as a driver." Since Elizabeth mentioned she would come to pick me up by car for the ride home, I felt a bit guilty but still asked her about it. Then, Elizabeth, with a beaming smile, said, "Don't hesitate. The world is a bit unsafe these days, and I want to do this. While you're enjoying the reunion, Mom and I will have a nice meal." "All right, thank you, Elizabeth. You two be careful and have fun. Take care at the reunion, Dad." With that, we parted ways in front of the reunion venue. I watched Elizabeth's car until it disappeared from sight, then, with determination, made my way into the venue. Guided by the staff, I opened the doors to the hall where my classmates, who had already arrived, were gathered. "What, James? I thought you were someone else for a second, but it's you, James. Long time no see. How have you been?" Classmates who recognized me rushed over. We're all in our late 50s now, but I could still see the remnants of our Harvard days, and I was instantly filled with nostalgia. "James, after dropping out of the Harvard, you have some nerve showing up here." "Michael." As I was catching up with everyone, Michael arrived with his entourage. Immediately, the unpleasant memories of Michael surfaced, and my expression darkened. "You're still getting all the attention, but just so you know, I was the one who sent you the reunion invitation. Did you think it was sent by one of your buddies by mistake?" Michael started laughing loudly with his cronies. Shocked by this revelation, I was at a loss for words. Seeing my reaction, Michael laughed again, enjoying himself. "Idiot, living in a fantasy world. This is a stage set to humiliate you. You quit the Harvard because you were poor, right? Even with a smart head, being poor is just unfortunate. This guy, he seems to have a wife. I heard it when he was talking with his friends earlier. Seems like someone inside knows her, and they said she's quite beautiful." One of Michael's cronies, who had been eavesdropping on our conversation, whispered to him. Hearing this, Michael smirked again. Well, she must really have peculiar tastes to be attracted to someone as shabby as you. Being the wife of a poor man must be so pitiful." Michael scoffed. My anger began to boil, not just for me but for dragging my wife into this. "What have I ever done to you? Huh?" I asked Michael in a low tone, giving him a sharp look. "I'm asking why you can say such awful things so casually." "Because you still annoy me to this day. When we decided to have this reunion, your face popped into my head and I got so irritated. I orchestrated this to make you come, so we could bully you in front of everyone. It's like a continuation of our Harvard days since you ran away back then." Realizing Michael was harassing me again for such a petty reason, I was frankly astounded, but he seemed serious. Michael grabbed a glass of alcohol from a nearby table and splashed its contents on me. "Poor people look just right, getting drenched in booze," he said, laughing heartily before grabbing me by the collar and dragging me outside. "Now that everyone's seen you're poor, I have no use for you. Don't ever show your face around me again." Michael threw me to the ground and, laughing, turned to go back inside. Just then, a car appeared and stopped in front of us. Initially blinded by the headlights, I couldn't see clearly, but it was a familiar luxury car. "Dad, what are you doing here?" Hearing a familiar voice, I was taken aback. Indeed, it was Elizabeth who had stepped out of the luxury car. "Elizabeth, why are you here? I said I'd come to pick you up, didn't you remember?" Now that she mentioned it, it was the time Elizabeth said she would come. Thinking I had forgotten, Elizabeth puffed up her cheeks, seemingly annoyed. "Sorry, I got caught up talking with friends and lost track of time." "Really now? And you're on the ground, and wet. Are you okay? This smell. Did you get alcohol poured on you?" "It's fine, not something to worry about." Noticing I was drenched in alcohol, Elizabeth was shocked but reached out her hand to help me up. Then, handing me a handkerchief, I thought to myself how considerate my daughter was. "Are these people your friends, Dad?" As I wiped the alcohol from my hair and suit with Elizabeth's handkerchief, she noticed Michael and his group and asked me. At that moment, Michael's demeanor changed upon seeing Elizabeth's face. "You are?" Michael, trembling and turning pale as if afraid of Elizabeth, surprised me with his reaction. Then, Elizabeth, upon seeing Michael's face, smirked mischievously. "Why are you here, Michael? Weren't you supposed to be on night shift today?" Though smiling, Elizabeth seemed angry. "Elizabeth and Michael know each other?" Confused, I asked, and Elizabeth answered. "Know each other? He works at my hospital." Shocked by this revelation, I couldn't hide my surprise. It seemed Michael was also surprised to see Elizabeth and me conversing. "I swap shifts with someone else today, but are you two related? I mean, you share the same last name?" Michael, looking back and forth between Elizabeth and me, asked her. "Yes, that's right. And what of it? What's your relationship with my father? I understand you're one of his university classmates from the fact this is a reunion, but you don't seem like friends." Elizabeth, deducing from the situation that Michael wasn't a friend, glared at him. Michael, panicking, started to make excuses. No, we were friends and got along well back in our Harvard days, right, James?" Saying this, Michael forced a smile and put his arm around my shoulder. Repulsed by Michael's overly dramatic act, I thought he could almost be an actor, but determined not to play into his hands, I shook off his arm. "Stop it. We never had any good memories together, did we? That's what my dad says." After shaking off Michael's arm, I moved next to Elizabeth and glared at him. Under Elizabeth's stern questioning, Michael became even more flustered. Maybe I was the only one who thought we were close. "What are you talking about, Michael? Don't be scared of this woman. Just because they're family doesn't mean they're not poor. Besides, you just got done putting James down, and now what?" One of Michael's cronies, not understanding the situation, blurted out this bombshell, causing Michael to scold him. Then, Elizabeth burst into laughter. "Us, poor? Don't make me laugh. Then how did I get something like this? Elizabeth gestured towards the luxury car she had arrived in. A bright red Ferrari. The cronies, who hadn't paid attention to the Ferrari before, were taken aback by Elizabeth's remark. This is my Ferrari, bought with my own money. Who dared to call my father poor? Elizabeth smiled again, but her words made Michael and his cronies turn pale with fear. Then, one crony pointed at Michael. You bastard, you sold me out. It's the bed you made. I can't stand talking to someone who grovels to a woman. Let's go. The cronies left Michael behind, saying this. Angered, Michael yelled after them. She's not just any woman. She's the head of the hospital I work at, damn it. Well, thank you for the introduction, Michael. Your friends seem to have deserted you though. Elizabeth said this, mocking Michael, who had been abandoned by his cronies. In a fit of anger, Michael inadvertently revealed Elizabeth's true identity, but it seemed his confession did not reach his cronies. Now, it seems I'll need to have a lengthy discussion with you about the harassment you've subjected my father to. Depending on what you say, I might just have to fire you. Please, director, anything but that. I was surprised at Michael's promptness to apologize when Elizabeth threatened him with dismissal. At that moment, I felt the true extent of Elizabeth's influence as the hospital director. The one you should be apologizing to is my father, not me. Are you senile? James, I truly am sorry. Please forgive me. If I get fired, my parents will scold me. Michael, scolded by Elizabeth and begging me for forgiveness, was so self-centered that Elizabeth and I were beyond words, just astonished. Look, Michael is truly apologizing. That's disgraceful. Weren't you spouting insults at James just a while ago? Are you incapable of standing up to that woman? As this commotion unfolded, a crowd of other classmates from the venue came out to the entrance, drawn by the noise. It seemed the cronies who returned inside had spread the word about Michael. Michael had mistakenly thought I was poor and planned this reunion to make an example of me in front of our classmates. However, his plan backfired spectacularly, and he ended up publicly apologizing to Elizabeth and me, crying in front of everyone. The next day, when Elizabeth spoke with Michael, he began to talk as if he had resigned himself to his fate. He confessed to having bullied me during our Harvard days. Furthermore, despite being scheduled for a night shift on the day of the reunion, he had pushed his work onto another doctor to attend the event. This was something heard from the doctor he had burdened. He thought you were poor because you dropped out of the Harvard halfway through and just assumed it was due to financial reasons. Well, I can see why he might think that. That's why you're underestimated, Elizabeth scolded, leading me to reflect. Perhaps I hadn't talked back to Michael enough, which might have contributed to this situation. If my actions led to this situation, then I too am at fault. But Elizabeth didn't forgive Michael for his harassment towards me and decided to fire him. Michael, having been fired, seemed dejected, and I could almost picture his downtrodden appearance. Elizabeth is a Harvard graduate, running her own hospital and a published doctor. Because Elizabeth is a renowned doctor in the medical community, Michael, having made an enemy out of her and becoming the subject of rumors, was ostracized from the medical field. Now shunned by his parents, he's been leading a life filled with part-time jobs. If it weren't for your help, I would still be belittled by Michael. Thank you, Elizabeth. When I expressed my gratitude, Elizabeth oddly responded with a thanks as well. Curious, I asked why, and she shared something unexpected. Mom told me, you dropped out of the Harvard for the family. If I were in your shoes, I'm not sure I could have made that choice immediately. Listening to Elizabeth, I thought about how talkative Christine was, but appreciated her words. My decision back then was influenced by my experience with the drowning accident. My life, which could have been lost, was saved. So, extending a helping hand to my family, who saved me, seemed only natural. Because of that choice, I found a different path, met my wife, and was blessed with Elizabeth. I had no regrets. Sharing this with Elizabeth, she said she was proud to have me as her father. You're knowledgeable and worked hard for the family, allowing me to graduate from the Harvard. Being able to help you was also thanks to the support from you and Mom. Have more pride in yourself, Elizabeth said. I already did. Elizabeth, who had grown up so admirably, was my pride. Years later, inspired by Elizabeth, I resigned from the major company I had long worked for and decided to retake the Harvard entrance exam. When I shared my desire to retake the exam with Christine, she initially was surprised but then smiled and supported my decision. Encouraged by this long-dormant dream, I decided to chase it once more. After days of studying and hard work, I was accepted into the Harvard again. Years later, having diligently studied at the medical school, I graduated from Harvard. We did it, Dad. Now you're officially a doctor too. It's all thanks to the support from you and Christine. Thank you so much. I was immensely grateful to my family. Fulfilling my dream of becoming a doctor, I started working at Elizabeth's hospital, helping to save lives alongside her. I never initially thought that what I did for my family would come full circle and benefit me. I vowed to continue being a proud doctor for my family and patients alike.